Welcome to Right Fit Leader, a podcast from Alec Broadfoot and the Hire with Confidence team at VisionSpark. This is where visionaries, entrepreneurs, and leaders learn how to hire leaders, lead better, and build teams that last. Through expert insights, real client stories, and conversations with top leaders, you will hear how we find A players for your business. This is Right Fit Leader.
Welcome back to the Right Fit Leader podcast, where we explore what it really takes to build teams that scale and leaders who thrive. I'm your host, Alec Broadfoot. Joined with me today is my co-host, Andrew Bartholomew. Every episode, we explore how visionaries can elevate their leadership, build the right team around them, and create a culture that allows their company to scale with confidence. And today, we have a very special guest, Aaron Marcum, a visionary and entrepreneur, industry transformer, coach, and best-selling author. Aaron founded and scaled multiple companies, including Home Care Pulse, which reshaped quality and benchmarking in the home care industry. He's now the founder of Breakaway 365 and the author of the #1 bestseller, EntreThrive. Aaron's work centers on helping entrepreneurs accelerate the results while creating the good life, personally, professionally, and everything in between. We couldn't think of a better person to join us. Aaron, welcome to the Right Fit Leader podcast.
So good to be here, Alec. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, and I'm excited to be with you.
Yeah, Aaron, so your best-selling book, EntreThrive, it outlines 8 laws that help entrepreneurs accelerate financial freedom while creating a more meaningful life. Which of those laws tends to create the biggest breakthrough for your clients? And also, could you tell us why?
Yeah, it's hard to play favorites, but I have a cornerstone and a keystone and a cornerstone. And the cornerstone law that I think everything hinges on is the first one. And that's why I started with the first one, Entre clarity. And Entre stands short for entrepreneur, obviously. But clarity on, we hear about clarity on your why, your purpose, all of those things. But we use this term called guiding truths. And we get clarity on what do you want to be true about yourself. I have 9 guiding truths that I live by. My actions reflect character. My mind is at peace. My ventures create freedom. These guiding truths I've had for 16, 17 years. And I just added my ventures create freedom about 3 years ago because I was finding I was investing in companies and they were wanting too much of me. So I put that one in as a filter to say, I don't want to invest in something that's going to pull me out of my unique ability, right? Out of my, what I want to, my superpower. And so, yeah, clarity on that. We call them breakaways. That's the name of the company, is that it's a cycling term where you break away from the pack, and getting clear on what your breakaways are. Right. And who you want to break away with. If you're familiar with the cycling world, Tour de France, whatever, is that successful breakaways, when they break away from the pack, they do it with the team, with a group of other riders. And it's a great analogy for entrepreneurship and the right fit leader, right? Is that as a visionary, as an entrepreneur, and I look back on the history of success and failures, that the failures were tied to when I tried to break away by myself versus having a team with me. And so Entre clarity goes back. We talk about it in the chapter. I talk about in that chapter about that law is what is, get clear on what those breakaways are. Who do you want to go and break away with? And, and we go through this whole process. And anyway, that one's really key. And then the last one is the keystone law, which is Entre agency, which is entrepreneurial agency, like really making sure. So I have a master's degree in positive psychology. And one thing I learned from going through that program is that, and Martin Seligman teaches this, is the importance of agency and autonomy, right? As an entrepreneur. And that freedom and autonomy go hand in hand. And if those don't coexist, then it doesn't matter how clear you are on your goals. Is if you're in your business all the time, you don't have the right people around you. Again, that breakaway analogy I love.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of that analogy is when you break away with a group, you're drafting off each other. You're saving so much more energy than doing it by yourself. And so, anyway, it's powerful.
I love the metaphor with cycling, and I used to enjoy watching cycling, but once I realized it was a team sport and not an individual sport, my love for the sport really changed. And there's so much in the sport of cycling that can really be appropriate for leadership teams and cultures, and there's so much about that. Aaron, you started a coaching company, and I'm curious, like, what kind of tell us the type of clients you coach, and what types of transformations have you seen with your clients?
Yeah, I'm really focused and dialed in on the home care industry. I've been in this industry for 24 years. And so our breakaway program is really focused on the visionary, and typically their right hand, their integrator,
Hmm.
is involved in the program, because we don't want, if we just work with the visionary, then we're a lot of the things that we coach on are not necessarily being delivered back into the company and implemented.
Hmm.
So like the breakaways, like that's a big like starting point where we start our clients. We have some tools that help them define their breakaways. But yeah, it's home care entrepreneurs. It's a growing industry, and it's an industry that experiences probably more burnout than many out there because of the emotional tie to taking care of the elderly, taking care of people. A lot of people who start a home care business, they have huge hearts, but aren't familiar with running a business as much. And so we help them really get back into their business, build a better business so they can work on it more than in it, and the whole thing. And so that's our focus. Very niche, very niche.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
I
and
love it.
very premium. It's a high-end type coaching program. So we work pretty close with our clients, with that.
And in terms of your training as a coach, did you do any training
Yeah,
yourself, or you've experienced it? So I know you're a great coach, but did you go through any sort of coaching program?
I did. So I coached for many years leading up before. I mean, I did some training. I was with eMyth for a little bit
Hmm.
uh, years ago when I first started my first company, a home care company. But I actually was an EOS implementer for 5 years. And so certified EOS implementer. And the story behind that is I had a pretty nice exit from Home Care Pulse, the company that was mentioned in my bio. And it happened so fast. I was like, what do I do? And we had implemented EOS, and I love EOS. And so decided, I'm just going to dive in and be an EOS implementer, and did that. Loved it. Had a lot of success, but I'm an entrepreneur through and through. And so there just came a point where I wanted to restart a couple other companies. So it's not just the coaching company. I have some other things all in home care. Like that's my ecosystem. I
Hmm.
like to invest in what I already know and what I'm really familiar with. But my coaching business, Breakaway 365, is one of them. But it's the EOS is always there, right?
Hmm.
Always using it. Like we run on EOS with Breakaway 365 coaching program. So our coaching program framework really is EOS when it comes to our internal framework, like how we run as a company. And then the coaching side of it is a lot more leadership coaching, helping them understand how to delegate. We actually have some of our clients who are using EOS implementers as
Hmm.
well, because they go really, really hand in glove there. And so, which I love. We tend to have, when they're using EOS and they're using our program, it seems to be the magic in a home care business that gets them moving forward.
That's awesome.
So
And uh, before Andrew asks you a question here, I wanted to ask you about you sold a company, and what experiences from that shaped your approach to leadership?
yeah, oh man, so many. Um, Most of my failures probably shaped me the most from that experience. And I tell this story quite a bit, but We had started a company. It's kind of like the JD Powers of home care. I started in 2008 after I'd sold my first business, which was a home care company. And I saw the need for data analytics and satisfaction management, started Home Care Pulse. And at first, it was like pushing a string to get the industry to adopt it and understand the importance of even measuring data, which is crazy to think of now. But over time, we helped change and evolve and further sophisticate this industry so that by 2014, 2015, we were sailing. We were starting to take off, but I was burned out. I was like exhausted. I was in my business. And a lot of the failures is that I controlled everything. I wanted to control all the decisions, everything around me. And then I had a customer that we were working with, a home care company actually, that was implementing EOS. And so in early 2016, I read the book Traction, and then I found EOS. And that's that 2016. And I was already making some real positive changes in 2015 to get my life back. But that's when I got into cycling, was 2016. I started taking care of myself, health better. And then I had this whole time, I had my COO that I had hired in 2012. I just wasn't really good at delegating to him, but he was my integrator, and we identified him through the EOS process. And once we figured that out, the magic happened, and it was like hockey stick growth after that. I stepped down as CEO 2 or 3 years later, and simply because I knew that to go to the next level, we needed even more leadership, and I wanted to help coach that leadership team. Became the chairman. Anyway, long story short, some of the mistakes I made early on was like, didn't delegate, wouldn't let go of control. And I made really silly mistakes because I was not listening to my team. One really big one, it's a long story, so I won't bore you with it, but I undermined some of our biggest customers by launching a competing product that in my mind didn't seem competing, but I had my team members and my COO, my integrator, saying, Aaron, no, this is going to compete. I didn't listen, and I pushed it, and it did end up blowing up in our face, And so over time, I evolved as a leader. Like, my leadership style now compared to how it was like in 2014 is night and day. Leadership. It's not perfect, but I was so fearful back then. And protecting my own reputation was too important to me, and so I was making decisions based upon fear. And I learned that actually stifles a business, right? Keeps it from growing. I have great ideas, but they don't work if I don't have the right people around me. So,
well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron, you mentioned burnout. I'd love to continue talking about that here in our discussion. I think it's such an important topic for visionary entrepreneurs. But you also mentioned, how Home Care Pulse was really transformative in home care. Was there an aha moment when you realized the industry needed a better way to measure quality?
Yeah. My aha moment came 2 or 3 years before I even started Home Care Pulse. It was when I was in the burnout phase, literally, of my own home care business, probably 4 years before. And I could see that my struggles, me coming home at 6 p.m., having dinner with my kids. At the time, I had 4 kids, and then my wife, and then I would go back to the office sometimes till 1 or 2 in the morning, right? And part of the problem is that I didn't know what was working and what wasn't working. And I was just spinning my wheels. I didn't have any data. I didn't have any information. And I didn't know how well my care professionals were doing in the home. And so I had the idea of contracting with another company to help measure all that, but they focused in a sister industry, assisted living. And so it just wasn't the right fit. So my aha moment was, there needs to be a company that does this in the home care space. And, why not me, right? And I started building the concept probably 2 or 3 years before I actually started it, thinking through it, how it would work. And interestingly enough, my company, years later, I mean, just I guess 2 years ago, after I already exited, bought that company that I used early on in my business. They actually,
Okay. That's cool.
yeah, it's cool. It's kind of a full circle here, but yeah, it was. I think with any entrepreneur, when they, some of your best ideas come from the frustrations of your existing business, right? And how can I serve my competitors? But that's part of Alec and I are in strategic coach, but that's the free zone concept, right? Is that Dan Sullivan has taught that for years, is some of your best growth is selling back to your competitors. And that's exactly what I did with Home Care Pulse. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. You mentioned earlier you have a degree in positive psychology, and that's from the University of Pennsylvania, which is really
Yeah,
impressive.
thanks.
I'm curious, like, what were some of the things you learned in your graduate work, and like, how does that apply into your current coaching world?
Yeah, wow. It applies coaching, being a father, all the things. One of the key principles or things I studied while there, because I went in with real intention. I went in wanting to help entrepreneurs, specifically for home care, but general entrepreneurs. Like my book, EntreThrive, is for the general entrepreneur. It wasn't written just for home care, because entrepreneurs in general experience a lot of the same feelings, right? Emotions, different things like that. And so I wanted something for all entrepreneurs. And so that book was inspired by the work I did in my capstone, or my thesis capstone of my program. And it was around autonomy and the importance of autonomy as an entrepreneur. And especially for those new entrepreneurs that they get into their business, have a great idea, but they get stuck really early on because the freedom that they dreamed about, they're not experiencing it, right? So I did this whole work on it. And so I was just fascinated with it, and just how, like, positive psychology is the science of well-being. That's kind of how we phrase it, but it's not the science of happiness. It's not how to live a happier life necessarily. It's just really understanding the science behind why some people thrive and why some people don't. And I really went deep into, why do some entrepreneurs thrive and why do some don't? And that leads back to the right fit leader kind of concept, is that one of the things I discovered is that autonomy cannot exist by yourself. Going back to the breakaway analogy, right? Is that our freedom, as entrepreneurs, that is oversold sometimes, right? Is that, own your own business, you'll have all this freedom. I believe in that. I believe it's attainable. I've seen it in my own life. But it's not, I don't think it's possible as a solo entrepreneur. I hate to say that, but I just don't. Like, I know a lot of solo entrepreneurs who don't have a team around them. They're in their business constantly, right? And they're struggling. And so I really advocate to get beyond that solo entrepreneur phase and build a team and build a product and a service, whatever it is, that is scalable. Because it's interesting in my program, going back to the question, is that I found also a lot of the concepts, like even Dan Sullivan teaches in Strategic Coach, with the gap and the gain, right? That's a positive psychology concept. In fact, I got Martin Seligman and Dan Sullivan all on the same call with me, which was one of my top. Like, Martin Seligman's the father of positive psychology, one of the most well-known psychologists, and Dan knows of his work really well. Like, has been a fan of his work for years. And so I got them on the same Zoom call because Martin was one of my professors, and to see them go back and forth, and talked about the gap and the gain, and how important it is not to compare yourself to others and what others are doing, and to really celebrate those wins, like be in the gain from where you started to where you ended up. Anyway, I don't know how much you guys teach the gap and the gain, but I just found so many overlaps with that and the science behind positive psychology. But I don't know, I could go off for forever on positive psychology because there's just so many different, very well researched concepts that tie to entrepreneurship, tie to delegation, getting a team, kind of the team around you, all of those things. Autonomy is just not even possible without it as an entrepreneur. So, and that was my main point of study when I was there.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron, I think, with a lot of your educational background and your work experience and your passion, these are much needed topics for entrepreneurs. And you've said that entrepreneurial burnout rarely comes from too many hours, but from working on the things that drain your energy. How have you seen that play out when you're coaching leaders?
Yeah, they come to me like these entrepreneurs, these home care entrepreneurs with like, I'm spending too much time in my business. I'm working weekends, I'm working evenings. That's more of a symptom. And that's when I see them come to me. And I had not that long ago, a client of mine going over just that and saying, I'm just not spending the time with my family. And again, that's more of a symptom, because if we are doing the things that drive us and that are part of our unique ability, our desire, I also use a term called guiding genius. It goes in line with my guiding truths concept, is that if we are in our superpower and that we are really 80% or more of the time are really contributing at the highest level in our business, we don't need to work evenings and weekends at that point, right? We're maximizing our time. We're in our business. In fact, a lot of entrepreneurs, I find that I work with, some of the success, I think, Alec, you had asked that question. I don't think I answered it very well. But some of the success I've seen is like they're by 2 or 3 in the afternoon, they've done a lot of their really deep work.
Mm-hmm.
And it frees them to really the freedom they can choose to stay or go visit a client, or they can go see their kid's soccer game, right? Whatever they want to do, that freedom is really important. And so again, they're misconstruing the problem. They're diagnosing the problem as I'm working too much, and it's really they're working. And that too much is often doing things that drain their energy, that they don't love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's burning them out, is they're working a lot of hours spinning their wheels, doing things they don't love to do, when if they reverse that, really focus in on the things they love to do and they can contribute their highest contribution. Greg McKeown talks about that in his book Essentialism, is what is their highest contribution. And then thinking that dialed in, and then delegate those things to people that they don't love, right? It's the whole delegate and elevate tool that EOS has, is that once they get clear on that and they push things off, not all at once, but they get it onto other people's plate who do love it, who are good at it, then you're building this powerful team around you so that you can really be, as the visionary, I'm speaking from a visionary's perspective, that they can really be in doing the things they love and spending the time, so that if you have a 50-hour week, but 40 of those hours are in the things that you love to do, man, you're not going to burn out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you burn out in that scenario. Give me that week, right? Every week, and I'll take it.
That's something that we've seen in our clients where we've placed integrators, right? We see that their energy increases, their joy increases.
Yeah.
I experienced it myself 4 years ago when I hired John. Aaron, what do you think about this whole VI duo, visionaries having an integrator or having a number 2? What do you think about that? Is that
It's a
something
non-negotiable for me. It's like in any business, the first thing I recently, it's been about 3 years ago, I bought into another home care company out in the Southeast, and the leader, exceptional leader, she was burned out, working weekends, all that thing, and was not in her unique ability. And the first thing I did, the first decision we made was to hire an integrator, like bring on an integrator, and the right fit integrator. Small world, I ended up hiring my former executive director from Utah who moved Southeast. I didn't even know he did. Anyway, that's kind of a crazy story, but he ended up being the integrator, still the integrator there. And I think that one move pushed her into her guiding genius, and her unique ability, and got her weekends back, got her evenings back, and she was doing the things that she loved to do. And this is the crazy thing, is that her business grew 4 times. And I don't take a lot of credit for it, because it was just making that decision and getting the right people. And then we built more of a leadership team around those two, right? Is that once we got that in place, then we built this team around him. We did the same thing at Home Care Pulse. Once Eric was identified as my integrator there, even though he'd been working with me for 4 years, so it was an internal. I was grateful for that. But then we built the leadership team around us, and we moved mountains after that. That's that hockey stick growth. But it started with that integrator VI duo, and again, that company I invested in the Southeast it's just magic. Like the two of them working together and moving the company forward. And I see that with my own clients. It's one of the very first things we recommend right out of the gate, if not the first thing. Now, if they're really small, there's a process, right, to getting there. But I try to get them there as soon as possible, because their scalability is not certainly harder. And I would even take the position that it's almost impossible to scale without the right fit integrator. I've never seen any of my companies or anything I've been involved in truly scale without that duo in place. I mean, huge advocate, right? I mean, it's key. And you've seen it. You guys work, with people who, and you're obviously in that world even more than I am, and see the transformation. The key is right fit, right? I have had, in even my most recent companies, wrong fit integrator. And that's, or wrong fit visionaries, frankly, right? Is that you can have that as well. But often what I see the most is this wrong fit integrator, where the visionary made some exceptions, right? They liked the person and they made some exceptions. We're really big on the Kolbe assessment, and what we do. I don't know if you guys use that assessment or not, but we use it. And people will make justifications on, okay, well, they don't have high follow through, so therefore, but I really like this person, they're going to be fine, right? And I'm like, I've never seen an integrator who needed low follow through, right? Is that high follow through is a must, right? And so there's just certain things you've got to decide what your non-negotiables are. But
Yeah.
As far as hiring that TC.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time, and why visionaries tend to hire mediocre leaders underneath them, and they settle, and they hire people they like, or hire people they like that are like themselves, or they hire for potential, right, without using science and data. So we work with an assessment called the TIP assessment, talent impact profile. It works really well with the Kolbe, but it measures mental aptitudes and personality dimensions. And so we can see if someone is going to be process oriented, which an integrator needs to be, organized, strong mental acuity. So yeah, it's that is a game changer when you start using that kind of things in your decision.
Yeah.
And, the VI duo, the integrator role, is the number one search that we fill for our clients at Vision Spark. So, Aaron, I think we're all able to evaluate and say, when that right fit integrator is in place, it's the highest likelihood for the freedom that visionary is looking for, as well as the scale for the company. And 100%. So, yeah, full agreement on that. I think too, you've coached dozens of entrepreneurs. When you look at the leaders who truly thrive, what are some of those habits and patterns that set them apart?
One of the first habits, like when they hire that integrator, is give trust before they earn it, right? Is that you have to be confident in the hiring, like especially if they have the trust and confidence in your services, right? And VisionSpark's ability to find them the right fit integrator. And then of course it's still on them, right? They still have to make that final decision and they have to make sure it's the right fit for them. But once they make that hire, then if you wait for them to earn trust, you're going to lose out on some compounding growth, some learning experiences, even failure, right? And so the habit of, and I call it, really, I got it from John Maxwell. I think he called it the 10-80-10. I don't know if he calls it the 10-80-10 rule of delegation, but I love it. I teach it to my clients, and one of the best habits, especially when they hire that integrator, is give the, like, if you want something done, a project, especially if it's recurring and something that you want from your integrator or from another team member, or the integrator actually, when it comes to lead manage and holding people accountable, is give them the 10% vision of what needs to be done. What does done look like, right? Then that 80%, that's the autonomy. You know, what I learned in my program is let them fail, let them go through it, let them work on that 80%. That's the delegation piece. And then the last 10% is you coming back and reviewing their work, reviewing what happened, what did they get close to what done looks like, and then making the necessary edits and reviews and have them go back and finalize it. But it's that 80% that gives them the autonomy. And I think the best habits for visionaries and for entrepreneurs is that. Too often they're coming back in, every 10%, right? And they're hovering and they're creating chaos, in most cases. So, and I guess this comes down to, like, the summary of all that is to trust your integrator, right? When you get that right fit, is that give them the 10-80-10 and let them go with the 80%. Don't get in their business, right? Let them do it. That's the who, not how. It's like, that's the how. Like, all you care about is the finished product. So don't worry about how they're going to get there as much, So, and that's a hard habit for visionaries who've never had an integrator. And you guys see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
letting
go and just really trusting. But Stephen Covey's son, in Trust and Inspire book, he talks about the importance of giving trust first.
I love that, and giving trust before it is earned, which is tremendous. An interesting fact, we have an assessment tool that we use, and we actually measure someone's level of trust towards others. And it's really fascinating. And on the one end, you have people like me that are very trusting, and we can be blindsided. We may be a little gullible even, but we trust information and we trust people. On the opposite side, you have people who are really skeptical. They don't trust people or information. And one study that was done with the assessment was they looked at financial planners and which financial planners were the most successful. Most people think the one that is a little bit more on the skeptical side. They're going to ask really good questions of their clients. They're going to ask questions about the market. But the opposite was true, is those individuals that were more trusting. And what the study found was that because individuals that are trusting actually reciprocate that very easily. So they immediately trust someone, and that trust is reciprocated. And so they tend to build those relationships quicker. So I thought that was a fascinating study, just right along with what you just talked about. So, Aaron, I'm curious, in the home care industry, there's so much change going on. What are some of the opportunities and dangers you see in the home care industry?
Well, we'll start with the danger is that is government oversight, right? Is that it seems like, and I'm on record saying this, is that when they get their hands into our industry, at least, and what we've seen firsthand, it usually doesn't go well, and when there's too much oversight. I believe in oversight. I believe they should be involved. But that's been some of our challenges, especially for those home care providers who are so dependent on government reimbursements for their services. So I really advocate more of a private pay luxury model as well, and so where they can get some high-end type business because they need services as well as veterans assist, working with veterans. There's some great programs out there. But the biggest challenge in our industry, number one, is the shortage of care professionals. Finding good, because the demand is there. People want to stay in their home. And so that shortage is real. Some of the cool things coming that have some of our industry in fear, but I'm like, let's embrace it, is this AI, right? And these, even robotics, some of these robots who can sit with a senior and have a 4-hour conversation with them that a human just isn't able to have. And so that could help with the caregiver shortage challenges that we have in this industry. But retention starts at higher. And so, the solve that is like, you've got to make sure that don't have a leaky faucet or a leaky, I guess better analogy, a leaky boat or whatever, where you're losing them out the other end, right? Is that they're leaving you and you're not retaining that talent. The care professional talent. Same thing with their leadership team. A lot of turnover with some of these home care providers when it comes to the leadership team, because they don't know how to lead them. They don't know how to inspire them. And that's something, again, I'm trying to help solve right now in this industry with our program. But there's various challenges. Great opportunity though for people who want to get into an industry that's just growing and hasn't even hit the tipping point yet, which is crazy. But 2033 is what they say is kind of the tipping point because of baby boomers, wealthiest generation. They're in the need of home care. So just throwing it, it's a great opportunity for the right people. It's a hard business. It's not easy. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned robotics, which would be really interesting. I mean, I know Elon Musk and Tesla I think it's a prototype, but for $20,000-$30,000, you can get a robot in your house that, can do all the chores. So it'd be interesting to see how your industry could embrace that, train these robots on how to care for the elderly and manage their prescriptions and making sure they're eating and doing all the things that you guys are really good at. That would be
really
interesting. We talk a lot.
This hurdle there, just really quick,
Yeah.
Alex. This hurdle is actually probably not the technology. It's these seniors embracing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, it's hard to get them. More and more obviously have smartphones and they're using them, especially baby boomers. They're really adopting that. But I do believe that by 2033, the adoption of those kinds of things are going to be far easier than they were 5 years ago, right? Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And my parents are around 80 and I can't see them embracing a robot in their home, in their home. Yeah. So, on our Right Fit Leader podcast, we talk a lot about CEOs and visionaries tolerating mediocre performance from their leaders. I'm curious why you think they tolerate mediocre performance.
I mean, just from my own personal experience, in the past where I tolerate it. One was out of fear, right? A fear of conflict, fear of facing a difficult conversation, right? I think a lot of people, they just allow things to slide and think things will get better, denial, that kind of thing. But I think a lot of it is, it's the fear of conflict and not knowing how to address it, and also facing the fact that they made a bad hire, perhaps, right? And that they're so, even today, and it seems a little crazy to me with all the knowledge we have out there, that the longer you keep a bad hire, the more toxic your culture becomes, right? It's just that bad apple in a barrel, and yet it happens all the time still, right? Is that people are keeping these because, again, afraid of conflict, afraid of what, like in the sales seat, afraid of, and it's really sometimes even seat specific, like for a salesperson to let them go, they're always, a lot of times it's fear about what clients or customers are going to walk with them, or what's the downside of all this. They start ruminating and making up stories that aren't even true, making up a future that's not even probably going to happen, right? And then that rumination about, because our people issues in our companies are our hardest challenges, right? I mean, that weigh the heaviest on us as leaders. And addressing it is like eating the frog, Brian Tracy. He wrote the foreword to my book, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. He's a great guy. He's such a great guy. But that book, Eat the Frog is true, is that we procrastinate those things. And before we know it, we're 6-9 months down, and we lost out on a lot of compounding results because we didn't make a decision.
Yeah.
And then what happens? Yeah. We make the decision, we let him go, and then or we part ways, and then our team members come to us and say, "What took you so long?"
Always. Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if that answered your question.
That was great.
Yeah. Big challenge.
Yeah. Andrew, did you have one more question for Aaron? I think Andrew may have something's going on with his internet here. So yeah, so you've lived the power of a strong VI duo. What advice would you give leaders who are trying to find that right fit integrator?
Sure. I tell people this all the time, is that slow to hire, is the best way to find the right person, right? Mm-hmm. But I kind of, over the last while, I kind of switched that to, like, it doesn't have to be slow, just have to find the right person. That's where, like, again, I mean, I'm giving you a little bit of love here too, is like using Vision Sparks to shorten that curve. Mm-hmm. Because when I found, and back then I didn't identify him as my integrator, but when I found Eric, it took me 8 months of constantly searching, doing a lot of the work myself. And I think if I would have known about you guys, I could have shortened that significantly, right? And we get so much. The other advice I would say is that if it's not advice from you or getting your take on individuals and having you guys search it out for them, at least get advice from others, like team interviews, making sure that you, as the visionary, you are not making this decision in a vacuum, right? Is that you're really listening to other people before you make that key decision in hiring the integrator, because you want feedback from people that are going to report to this person as well, that you trust. And again, you guys, I know, provide, like, with your assessments and with your consultations and your ability to find that right fit. It just is a no-brainer to shorten that learning curve, or not just the learning curve, but the hiring curve.
Yeah.
So you can get that person. I use the word compounding growth all the time, because I've seen it to where you lose 2 months, you've lost out on maybe a year of compounding growth, right? So,
yeah. Andrew, I asked Aaron the question about the VI partnership, and I know you're having some technical issues. Do you have another question to ask Aaron before we wrap up here?
No, I mean, I think just, sorry for whatever that was there, but I think just the reality of just how much of our conversation has talked about, how to avoid burnout. Where are you putting your energy? Having the right people in place, and the power of that VI duo. So maybe just a follow up, to that is, have you seen where the value of, the visionary might not be that person that's having those tough conversations, right? And having that right integrator that takes that load, and thus immediately translates into additional energy for that visionary.
That is a great point. I probably should have like when you're hiring your integrator, right? You want that's on the visionary typically to make that final decision. Not typically, always should be. But once you get that right fit integrator, That's they're leading and managing and holding people accountable at that point. And they're the ones who shouldn't tolerate mediocrity, right? They're the ones who have to understand, and this goes back to core values and what your real core focus is as a company, so that you're all on the vision and the mission of the company, so that they go, yeah, this person doesn't pass the test here because they're falling low on these core values, have for 6 months, and giving your integrator the decision-making power to let go of the wrong fit team members. And all they're doing, it, in my opinion, this is my opinion, all they're saying as a visionary is, I've been letting this person go. Just want you to know that in case someone comes to you. If they come to you, send them back to me, make sure there's no end runs there. But yeah, so key is that now that's the power of the integrator, is now the visionary can fly at that 30,000 foot level or higher sometimes and scale that company, and really make sure expansion, whatever your goals are, there's so much power in that. And, having weekly same page meetings with that integrator, but for the most part, that integrator is really just implementing that vision.
Yeah. Aaron, this has been fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah,
really
I love it.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Yeah. Your journey and insights are a powerful reminder that leadership is more than just building a business. It's really building a life that matters. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
I appreciate the invite. Thank you.
How can listeners find more out about you and your coaching?
Yeah. So if you go to probably the best site, it's the simplest site, is aaronmarcum.com. Just go there. You can get to the Breakaway 365 program there as well, but just Aaron Marcum, just my name, .com. And there's some good resources. You can actually get to the book from there and order the book. So, yeah.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for tuning in to the Right Fit Leader podcast. Until next time, lead well, hire right, and keep building the team that will take you where you want to go.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Right Fit Leader, brought to you by VisionSpark. Have questions or ready to hire your right fit leader? Email us at discover@vision-spark.com. Until next time, remember VisionSpark is your go-to partner for finding leaders and building teams.